We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio. I'm still your host, Mark Angelides, and we continue to be joined by long-time host of this here radio show, Mr. Tim Donner. Now, earlier we were talking more specifically about Kamala Harris's recent Fox News interview, but now, Tim, I'd like to talk about the wider 2024 race and how that's playing out. And if I may just take a moment first to discuss something that we're doing together on the pages of libertynation.com, Electoral Countdown, is we've actually been parsing the swing state pollings down to the last 5 most recent polls and then figuring out what those show, which I believe, and I think you agree with me, Tim, that it shows the more current trend, because swing state polling tends to be a lot sparser than national polling. Yes. And what we found was quite stunning is that Trump is actually leading. If you just take the last 5 polls for each of the 7 swing states, Trump is leading at time of recording in all 7 swing states and has more than an average overall of +1 across all those 7 swing states. What's your take?
Well, it's not just that Trump has basically taken the lead in every single one of the 7 swing states. It's the trajectory as well. The trajectory is clearly upward for him, downward for Kamala Harris. And that was inevitable because she's been basically unable to define what her presidency would look like. There's still lingering questions of, okay, she's not Donald Trump, and now she says she's not Joe Biden, but what is she? And I don't
She's somebody raised in a middle-class household, Tim, with a lawn, apparently, that needed to be cut.
The lawn is very important, Mark.
All about the lawn.
And that is, as I said, this whole thing about the middle-class background. She says she uses slogans that are the kind that she thinks middle-class suburban dwellers want to hear. But it's very transparent with something like, in my neighborhood, people were proud of their lawns. I mean, I think anybody who is a suburban dweller listening to that would kind of cringe, like, that's what she thinks I want to hear. But it's just not enough. She doesn't have the political skill to create a vision of what her presidency would be. And the most important question, really, when it comes down to it, is, and I wrote a piece on Liberty Nation with the title, "Can Kamala Harris Make Americans Forget the Last 4 Years?" And so far, she hasn't been able to do that. And I suspect this trajectory for Trump will continue upward because now people are saying, okay, it was nice Kamala momentum and campaign of joy and all the vibes. But when it comes down to it, they have to ask themselves, do I want this woman to be commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the United States? And do I want her to become the leader of the free world? It just seems like too heavy a lift for too many voters. And the excellent piece that you've been doing each day on the election, updating the numbers, clearly show the trends that way. There's a couple other indicators. Minority voters have been a serious problem for Kamala Harris. She's bleeding Black and Hispanic voters at a rather rapid pace, and she cannot win with the level of support that the polls are showing among Black and Hispanic voters. Party registration is another key element of this. For the first time in a long time, Republicans have actually outdistanced the Democrats in party registration. And that is a key indicator of where an election is likely to land. And if you take the presidential preference polls, put them aside, and just look at which Gallup has done with an excellent survey that was very revealing. Of the 10 past indicators of somebody that's going to win an election or lose it. 8 of those 10 indicators favor Republicans and Trump, and 0 favor Kamala Harris and the Democrats. 2 are considered a tie or a wash. So I think if you look past the number crunching and you look at the indicators of what people care about, it's hard to conclude that Kamala Harris would win this election.
But there's one fact that I found absolutely fascinating, and that's the superb Real Clear Politics. They have their Electoral College projection map, and like every other place that has a projection map, they've got a certain amount of what they consider safe Electoral College votes for Donald Trump and a safe amount for Kamala Harris. And then you've got the 7 swing states in the middle that are classed as the toss-ups. But Real Clear Politics is a bit of an outlier for one particular reason. It classes Minnesota as a toss-up, which, now I know you're going to love the history I'm going to lay on you here, Tim, because you know all this inside out. But the last Republican to win Minnesota was Richard Nixon. And even Ronald Reagan in his 49-state landslide failed to win Minnesota because obviously Walter Mondale, hometown boy. So they decided to go for him.
And Mondale barely won that state.
Mm. But now an average of pollings for Minnesota puts Kamala about 4 and a bit points ahead. The margin of error average of those polls is about 3.5, which means that there's probably about a point and a half swing needed for even Minnesota to swing to Donald Trump. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that people have a tendency to view these swing states and quasi-swing states like Virginia and Minnesota in isolation. And in fact, I think they need to be looked at more in bulk because there's a certain zeitgeist that is present in the Rust Belt that isn't in the Sun Belt. And so if Trump is trending upwards in Pennsylvania, then he probably is in Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota as well. And likewise, if Kamala Harris is trending down, it's likely to cost her in each of these states because they're all connected. They're all Americans. They have similar values, heartland values, as they call it.
Tim Donner, thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.